Ready to ignite your potential? The Motivation Plus Marketing Podcast, hosted and founded by John Di Lemme with a 25-plus year track record in the success world. This podcast cuts through the noise to deliver fundamental, powerful insights for real success. Every episode features top performers answering 5 powerful questions, revealing their strategies for overcoming procrastination, hitting their biggest goals, and sharing their top marketing tips. Get ready to turn your motivation and marketing into momentum. Let's dive in.
Well, great day, champions. This is John Di Lemme, the host and founder of Motivation Plus Marketing Podcast, which has been around for many, many years. And I'm excited to bring to you today to my series, the 5 Questions to Success series, where I've chosen, handpicked in my 25-plus year track record of success. And I say this with a success grain of salt, as I'm based upon when you listen to this. I've turned 60 in this year of November of 2025, and I began speaking, coaching, and training 25 years ago. Actually, I have on my desk here in my studio my original cassette tape. So as I say, I've been around the world of success and motivation, marketing, teachings, authoring, traveled the entire world. So I've chosen to handpick top performers, professionals, people I've got to know over the decades in the success room to interview and ask them some great questions, the 5 questions to success. So today, I'm excited to bring you a great friend of mine, and we go back many, many years, which we're going to discuss today, Brad Szollose. And Brad has a name like mine. It has to be explained how to say it and then spell, so we'll discuss that today too. Brad is a globally recognized serial entrepreneur, former C-level executive, and an award-winning business author. One of his startups, K2 Design, became a publicly traded company on NASDAQ in an IPO. Known for his expertise in cross-generational leadership and workplace cultural transformation, Brad was thrust into the limelight as a .com executive. He has been featured in Forbes and Inc. magazines, Advertise and Age, and has appeared on international television shows, podcasts, and other media outlets. Brad is also the award-winning author of Liquid Leadership and the host of his own podcast, which I've been blessed to be a guest on there, his own podcast, Awaken Nation, interviewing today's cutting-edge entrepreneurs and crazy ones like myself. So, Brad, welcome to the Motivation Plus Marketing Podcast series, the top 5 questions to success. Welcome, my brother.
John, it is exciting for me to be on the show as you relaunch this. Yeah, we've known each other like 15 years, brother.
That's right. I believe it's 15, 16 years now when we spoke at the events out in Michigan and other events, and that's what I'm going to really enjoy about the conversation, and I believe all the listeners will also, is that, and I say this as someone that's now hitting my now being 60 years of age, is we have wisdom and we bring a track record. So, the whole goal of this is we're going to have a roundtable conversation. And my first question for you, Brad, on the 5 questions to success is how to overcome procrastination. As I traveled the entire world for 25 years, the number one question people always ask, anytime we did Q&As, we did hot seats, we did roundtables, mastermind, boot camps, they would say, John, how do you overcome procrastination? So question number 1, Brad, how do you overcome procrastination?
I love this question, and I'll answer it the best I can. First of all, I would ask yourself if your goals are exciting for you. I know people became lawyers because that's what their parents wanted. A lot of times we're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole or vice versa, when in reality our businesses might be completely different than we imagined if we just went back and said, is this really what I want to do? And that is the beginning of it, because you're not going to be procrastinating when you're excited about your goals. I get up early on a Saturday morning to edit my podcast, not because, I'm trying to show off or anything, but I'm excited about the guests that I've invited to my show. Like you, John, you've been on like 2-3 times. And then the second thing I would say is, you and I have immigrant parents. So my Hungarian father, he made me do chores. And he didn't care about my feelings, or if I had, an event to go to, he'd be like, go put your work clothes on. We're going to go dig a ditch. And I know you can appreciate this, John.
Absolutely.
God bless you. By the way. Your father just passed last year, and, I see the tight relationship you had, but it really boiled down to, I started to realize my dad made me do chores. He didn't care about my feelings or what I felt about them. And pretty soon I realized, here's another thing. I would try to do the chores badly so he would never ask me to do it again. And he would pull me aside and he says, if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. And he would show me how to do it. And at some point, John, I realized those chores could get done faster if I threw myself into them, just got them done. And these are some of your basic goals and strategies and tasks you got to get done. Treat them just like those chores. Got to get up every day, do this. Maybe it's you have a prayer ritual in the morning. Maybe you got to read. Maybe you have a goal of I got to get this done so I can go to the bank. Make those almost like rote, and just get it done. And the last thing I would say is, if you're not going to do it, don't do it at all. That's how my father put it. I put 110% into anything I do try to do. And I think that's important. I think that'll get rid of your procrastination.
And I love what you said. And as all my listeners know, over the decades now, which is exciting, over the decades, over time, time will tell its tale, and that's why I'm excited about a couple nuggets you shared. As everyone knows, I wrote this quote in my first quote book. I've written, like yourself, we'll discuss this in a few minutes when I talk about books. I've written 23 books before ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. We actually authored books, Brad, based upon wisdom without artificial intelligence. But something you said is so powerful. I want everyone to take this to heart. When you're excited about your goal, excited about your task, you won't procrastinate. It's very powerful. Is people will procrastinate when they're forced to do something. So when you love what you're doing, like right now, all of you know, I've retired from coaching, speaking, and training, and traveling the whole world, and I've always loved real estate. Matter of fact, when I first, retired, quote unquote, moved to South Florida and semi-retired when I did well in business, as I began speaking and coaching, I invested in real estate. And all of you know right now, that's what we get up every day so excited about what we do in the world of real estate in Florida. My wife being a stage, a designer, all the marketing I do, and I get so excited to break records. I mean, we just broke a record in the 23rd development here in South Florida, And it's so important what Brad said. So ask yourself this question. Are you so excited that you're consistently taking action? I'm telling you, that's a nugget. And then something you said about your dad too is, how you do something is how you do everything.
Yeah,
that's basically what your dad was telling you, and I love what you said, because that's the old school. As you know, my family came from Italy, as I say, legally immigrated to America. Your family came from Hungary. That old school hard work, chore, task accomplishment. Which ties into our next question, Brad, is the number one secret to hitting your biggest goals. What's your secret to hitting your biggest goals? And once again, everyone, grab a pen and write. This is old school. It's audio. Take notes. Fundamentals will always produce. So let it rip, Brad. You're awesome, brother.
Well, John, you mentioned I took a company public in an IPO. We raised millions of dollars, and the Wall Street Journal listed us at an evaluation of $26 million. So you're talking to somebody who went from a small town to big success in New York City. And I'm going to tell you something. I have a degree in graphic design. Did not have a degree in business, but I became obsessed with business at some point. And I'm going to tell your audiences, if you're listening, you have to ask yourself what type of business you want to grow. Do you want to be a single proprietorship, or do you want to be a corporation? And there are three types of people in this world. Write this down, because it took me 60 years to figure this one out, John. The first one is those who can manifest a business easily. And we know all those people. They fell into a business. They became a success. And they're very few, by the way. But they say, how did you get into making movies? Well, it was an accident. Somebody called me up and said, hey, you want to be an extra on the show? And eventually they became a director. And you're like, how the heck does that happen? So that's number one. Number two, there are those who work really hard and they get through and build a successful business through tenacity. And you and I, John, are both of those. But actually, number three is the one I lean more into. Number three, this is the third person. There are those who cannot manifest anything, no matter how much they try, unless they work with a team. I'm number three because I've created all kinds of things, but it wasn't until my fourth business when I got a decent business partner that actually was passionate about what we were both creating. And that was Doug Cleek back in the day. Doug and I had gone to college together. We knew each other. And we fought like cats and dogs. You're going to love this because some of you have had business partners. You don't want another business partner. I get that. But what happened with Doug and I is, although we fought like cats and dogs, we had separate disciplines. Even though we were both graphic designers, there was this overlap in the middle of being passionate about creating great work. And that's what we really fought over. I did the bookkeeping because Doug wasn't into that. But Doug also had some of these, this background in print. So one of our first big accounts came through one of my connections, which was American Express. And Doug got a big account, Banco Popular, which was one of the largest banks on the West Coast, because he had done banking applications and things like that. So we had the print discipline, and I had meetings. And that overlap really helped us expand super fast. I mean, we went from starting K2 in 1993 to going public by 1996. And that is unheard of a lot of times with a startup. So decide which one you are. Are you somebody who can manifest easily? You got all those connections? Or are you somebody who needs to work hard and get through it all? Or are you someone who needs to sit down with a team or have a business partner? And be brutally with yourself. You have to.
And something you said, Brad, too, once again, I got the pen out. Listeners, remember, grab a pen that writes, take notes. One of my first jobs when I was in college, I had 4 jobs going through college, Brad, and one was I worked at Jack LaLanne Fitness Center, and I met Jack LaLanne. People ask me today, I started when I was 21. For every year of my age, every day I do daily push-ups. So now I do 60 push-ups a day because I've just turned 60. Push-ups are fundamental exercises. They'll never change. I am telling everyone today, listening to this, is why I'm so excited about the quote-unquote the relaunch. When you grab a pen that writes and activates your mind, you take notes and you quiet your mind down to learn. What Brad said, I'm gonna pull the nugget out of this. His fourth business. You said your fourth business was you knocked out of the park, as they say, correct?
Yes.
So everyone, stay consistent. Something else Brad said was be tenacious. Be around the right team. Identify who you are. Identify what your strengths are. Identify how you can achieve your goals. And let's just unpack it a little bit more. I also know personally, Brad, that you are into martial arts and you are a black belt, triple black belt. What's your level in martial arts?
I'm a first-degree black belt in Kempo Jiu-Jitsu, and I also teach it.
And how many years ago did you start that?
Oh, I started that when I was 45, back in 2008.
So that's tenacious, being consistent, being focused, and learning through injuries and failures and having mentorship. Yeah, do you want sharing out too? It's a combination of personal goals being achieved and business goals achieved.
Well, what's funny with achieving a black belt? Some people, they ask, how long does it take on average to get a black belt? And I said, well, average people don't get black belts. You have to show up.
Wait! I gotta dive in there. Get that pen, people. Write it down. Say it again, Brad. That's huge. I love that.
Ask me, how long does it take for an average person, or on average, to achieve a black belt? And I said, average people do not get black belts.
I should ask people right now to write you a check for $10,000 and mail it to you for that wisdom. Because Because that's the secret in life. It's interesting. We just spoke to someone just now because, this is the whole goal of this podcast, and I'm excited about it. It's just a conversation with champions, top performance series. This is life. If you want above out, you're an above, you're listening, you're hearing this. You heard it somewhere. We're on every podcast platform out there. So however you're listening to this, you're listening to this. You're an above average person. Get away from people who are average. Get around people who are extraordinary. Get around people who will go the extra level, who, look down, like when people look at all real estate properties, people walk in and they as soon as they open that door, my wife is done staging and designing it, they stop. They walk over that threshold and they just go, wow. Because it's a little bit of extra, a little extraordinary. I love that. Average people. I can do another hour on that alone. But continue, sir. It's phenomenal.
Well, what Napoleon Hill said it best. He goes,
right.
Don't just offer something. Go the extra mile. When you are known for being great and giving more value than what they paid for, they will hire you again and again. That's what makes you above average. That's what makes you take it up a notch. And getting back to getting a black belt, if you think about, I got to do this, I got to do that. No. All I did was show up, shut up, and listen. And I approached it as I'm a white belt every single time. You're halfway there when you get your green belt. That means you're part of the family. That means you're taking it seriously. And here's the greatest part. When you hit brown belt, this just happens naturally. You flow differently. When I first started and I had to kick, I would lower my arms. When I had to punch, I would raise my arms. So those are bad defense tactics, okay? But I learned by the time I hit brown belt, your arms are up, your feet are up, you're moving, you're spinning, you're flowing differently. So you have to put in the hours, as Anders Ericsson said, you have to do those 10,000 hours for mastery. And don't think about it. Just show up, shut up, and listen. Put your nose to the grindstone, as they used to tell us when we were kids. John, you remember that? And that's what you do. I couldn't believe it. The day I was asked to take my black belt test was literally very shortly after I got my third-degree brown belt. Sometimes you'll stay at a belt level for a year, maybe 6 months. But I was literally asked to take the black belt test within 3 to 4 months after I had achieved my third degree in brown belt. And we didn't mess around. I mean, our sensei wanted us to fight and punch at about 70%. So I'd come out of there with black eyes. I'd go to business meetings with a black eye. Or I'd have a broken rib. You have to have tenacity. You can't give up.
That's right. And I tell you that's a word for this episode with Brad about the word tenacity. That's why the whole goal, I believe many of you are getting a hold of this from this episode and the other episode you're listening to, is the fundamental wisdom I'm sharing in interviewing, extracting from these top performers is to keep you distracted, and to keep you focused in a distracted world. When we first met back in the early mid-2000s, 2006, 7, 8, there was no social media. There was, right now we have 9,000 distractions, and that's the reason why people procrastinate. They don't achieve their goals. And I believe fundamentals. I believe, and I say it respectfully, I'm 6 years of age. I'm in impeccable physical shape. My dad was 94, literally passed away a year ago because he was just telling my wife, I'm just tired. I want to go home. I really want to go home to heaven. I mean, it was I was very close to my dad. It was a very difficult, defining moment in my life. And my mom passed away 3 years prior to that. And we're married 74 years. And it's really, fundamental wisdom is, there's certain things physically. Drink water, exercise, sleep. There's no 6-minute abs. That doesn't exist. I believe right now that we're in a time in life that people are getting back to fundamentals produce, and what Brad is sharing today about the tenacity and about being focused and about moving forward and being around the right people. And something just to reiterate something you said earlier is that you won't procrastinate when you're excited about your goals, when you're excited about what you want to achieve. Now then, the next question number 3 of our 5 questions for this podcast series, Brad, is share your favorite success quote. What is your favorite success quote?
My favorite quote is, "My presence speaks volumes before I say a word." And that's by the rapper Mos Def. You might know him better as Dante Terrell Smith, and you've seen him in movies like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Italian Job with Mark Wahlberg, and he's been on the TV show Dexter. But I love that quote, "My presence speaks volumes before I say a word." Mos Def. And, it's really about showing up, getting back to the martial arts. And you just got to show up and listen. Show up and be there. And by the time you're ready to open your mouth, people are on the edge of their seat.
And that's for everyone, as you know, right now. And part of my career, my speaking, coach, and training career, was I did many events at the Ritz-Carlton. Right now, the Ritz-Carlton is the epitome of customer service, customer experience. And when people think of you, they're going to remember how you made them feel. They're going to remember the experience. I'm known for, I always have a suit and tie on. I always dress for success. We're always on time. We're always early. And that's a great question. That's a phenomenal quote. The question for all of you to ask yourself was, when people think of your presence, what is your presence? Like, how do you present yourself? I mean, what are you? And it's so powerful. Dig more into it. What does it mean? Get Brad.
Yeah, I had a client years ago, a production studio, and they wanted me to help pitch a client for them. And this was Self Magazine. I'll just put it out there. An all-women's magazine, if some of you remember it back in the day. And my client, I worked for her for many years, freelance, and I really wanted her to win this account. But she was very, very, how can I say, waspy, let's say, very, very, everything had to be controlled. So I showed up the day of the pitch in it was back in the days of Miami Vice. You'll appreciate this, John. I had on a business suit that was, it was a custom design by Andrew Feza. Beautiful suit, beautiful fabric, but it was that baggy style back then. And I wore a T-shirt, and I wore these killer sunglasses and Capizios. And my client, almost had a hissy fit because she couldn't believe I was dressing like this. She wanted me in a 3-piece suit. But I'm not the accountant. I'm the creative director. And so I have to look the part of a creative director. So when I walked in, we were only supposed to be there for half an hour, but I brought my A game. And we sat there for an hour and a half, and I explained the vision for how we were going to help their magazine. And, we won that account, hands down, and she still, to this day, can't believe I did that. And it was simply because I knew who I was. I knew how I was going to present this particular pitch, and I spoke not about what we could do 100%. I spoke more how this could elevate their brand.
That's excellent. So good, Brian. Continue, sir.
That was just a shift in the pitch, asking questions, giving solutions, asking more questions than talking about myself. That was the most important part. And that's how we won the account. And
it's so tremendous for all of you listening about, we live in a world right now where, with all the filters and AI, something we're dealing with in the real estate world, and you see the videos we produce for my wife. I run the entire marketing for obviously my wife's a professional realtor, home staging designer, and we have a whole campaign. There's no AI or virtual staging with my wife's properties. They're real furniture, real decor. It's real. There's no filters, no AI. Very direct about. Who does not like that are the people who are trying to manipulate and do some clickbait, where you actually will look at something online, walk in a home, and it's not there. There's trees in the front yard. There's no trees on the property online. I mean, they AI everything. It's disgusting, and I'll rant about that here in a little bit in reference to marketing. But I want everyone to get what Brad said is be people are investing in you, and that goes right into the fourth question is, what's your number one or your top marketing tip for our listeners today, Brad? Over your many-year career in business, what's your top marketing tip for people?
Well, I actually have two, and the first one I want everybody to really pay attention to in the next couple of years. Look for the happy accidents, and I'll prove this to you. This is one of many happy accidents along the way that I kept in my toolkit. Now, back in the day, I was a single proprietor. I offered my services to all these production houses doing their big meetings or print design. And for years, I would call these places and they wouldn't hire me. Some of the biggest studios in New York City. And so, being a designer, I like to go to the museum, and I went to see some modern exhibits, and one of them was Roy Lichtenstein. And if you don't know who Roy Lichtenstein was, he's a modern artist. He used to do these giant paintings that looked like they were a cartoon coming out of the Sunday funny pages, if you remember those days. And
yes.
he happened to have painted this painting of a woman drowning, and she had her arm up over her forehead, and the ocean is swirling around her, and she's clearly sinking. She's going to die. And the bubble coming out of her mouth is, "I'd rather sink than call Brad for help." And I burst out laughing. I thought this was the funniest thing. And I went to their postcard, their gift shop, and they had a bunch of postcards by Roy Lichtenstein. So I bought a box, and I sent that specific postcard out that said, "I'd rather sink than call Brad for help." Do you know all those studios that hadn't called me back for years called me that Monday morning? I had 3 or 4 clients right away, and I wound up being in one of the top studios in New York City for business meetings. It was Carabiner back in the day. Anybody listening who has ever hired them to produce a meeting knows who I'm talking about. And when I would tell people, in my freelance circles, "Hey, I work at Carabiner now," they're like, "How did you get in there?" They were astounded. And that was a happy accident. It was filled with humor. It was lighthearted, and it didn't demand anything of them, but it teased them a little bit. And I know every studio manager just chuckled when they got that postcard.
And it was personal. And it was personal. It made people feel special. It was personal. It made people feel special.
They really do. The second thing is I have a lot of clients right now that are transitioning out of running and growing their businesses. They're very successful, but now everybody wants to be a speaker. And you and I, John, we've been doing this for a long time, and so they don't have any mentorship for this. So how do you enter a marketplace where there's other people who are much more successful in speaking, not in business? Well, nowadays you have to really stand out. So I've put together like magazines for clients or write their books or things like that. But nowadays you almost have to create a multiverse of touch points when it comes to marketing. And some of you think, well, I can do Google Ads or whatever. No, it has to be a full array of things. You have to touch base in Facebook, LinkedIn. You have to create extraordinary events and film them, photograph them. You have to write articles. The amount of articles I read sometimes on these websites like Medium and things like that, you start to really get into the head of the person because you want to position yourself as an expert in your field, but not just any expert, the only expert. So that means you have to get comfortable with high fees, high-level fees that you can just charge to people because you have had somebody position you in that world as the go-to expert, and you're the only one that can answer this. If you're in real estate, let's say, look at what you and Krista are doing. This is incredible. You're standing out in the marketplace, and you're not doing what everybody else is doing, using those AI, production shots. You're going in, you're taking your years of expertise in building this beautiful brand. So everybody now is looking at your wife, John, as the go-to person because she's personable, she customizes that sale, and she goes the extra mile for her clients. And if they can see that, you know, this is the modern era. They have to know you for a bit, like you, and trust you before they start to hire you. And you're just showing people, hey, these people are easy to know, like, and trust. I like this couple. I like Christy. I want to hire her. And that's what you want to do. You want to draw people in. Don't just write a book. Don't just do a video. Don't just do a podcast. You don't mail it in. Make it personable. Make it, you know, inviting. I want to sit down and have coffee with you two. Even if I don't know you, I want to sit down with you because I can see the value you're bringing.
You know, I'm going to say something, and I'm going to shock the listeners. You know, when I decided to launch this, and I said to Christy in my inner circle, I said, you know, I want to get back to basics, fundamentals of produce. I believe we live in a very clickbait, manipulating, conniving world of the online world. And, you know, I want everyone to write this down. Be a disruptor. Be a pioneer. Disrupt your industry. You know, it was funny. Right before we hit record, right before we began this podcast, and we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes, that we had a conversation. Someone said, I heard Christy on the phone because she just secured another featured property. And she goes, who does your marketing? I've never seen this done before. And I got the phone, and I said, well, she has a friend for 22 years that she's married to, and it's her husband. And I said, he goes, what you do with that property? You got 4 offers, because you mentioned the word condo in South Florida, and it's like the demon word. Meanwhile, we've broken records. I mean, I can go on. Obviously, the podcast is for I'm interviewing you, but for everyone listening, as Brad is saying, differentiate yourself. Create a wide array of information where people can look at you as an expert. Plus, going back to what you said in the beginning, be excited. You know, we get excited. You know, my nickname in real estate here behind the scenes is Chef Johnny. You know, going back to my Italian heritage, when you could have 10 restaurants, you put a passionate chef in that kitchen, he don't care how big their Facebook campaign is next door. When he produces a specialty of the evening and he features that, he knows it's going to sell out. And that's, in our business, we use the word featured properties. We feature property. We only take on properties that we care about and we believe in, and we know is value for everyone, for the new homeowner and for the current person that's closing one chapter and opening up another chapter. So to kind of recap what Brad is saying about the marketing, being expert. And then Brad, how can people, and I have one more question for you, then we'll wrap it up, but people can visit your website. Brad's website is BRAD Brad, and Brad has a unique last name like myself. You have to spell it twice, and people write it down. So it's BRAD, then spelled S as in Sam, Z as in Zoo, O-L-L, as in Lisa, O-S-E.com. BRADSZOLLOSE.com. And I highly suggest and recommend visit his site, take a look at what Brad has to offer. And Brad, final question. The one book that changed it all for you, one book you read that changed the trajectory of your life.
Well, when I was in the middle of writing my first book, which is Liquid Leadership, John, when you do that first book, there's trepidation on both sides. First, you're like, I'm hot stuff. I got some value here. I'm going to write this. And then on the other side is like, well, am I going to get this right? Are people going to like this book? Is it going to connect? And so in the middle of writing this, I'm reading other books. And all of a sudden, this one book came across my desk. I had to stop writing for a month because I realized, John, I was writing my book in the wrong direction. And that book, the book that I got a hold of, was called The Clue Train Manifesto. And it's written by Rick Levine, Christopher Loke, Doc Searles, and David Weinberger. These guys, they work at like MIT, they're at the top of the food chain on this technology. But they didn't approach it from the technology point of view. They approached it from the conversation that was taking place. And the quote that blew my mind was this. they were talking about the internet when it was first coming out. And they said the internet is a conversation. It's a natural conversation. And many of us remember when AOL was out, they would have these chat rooms, and there were women in there who were talking about breast cancer. There were men talking in there about other, men things that were private. And what Doc Searle said, this blew my mind. He said, where there's conversation, there is fire. In other words, passion. Where there's conversation, there's fire. And when someone tries to market into that conversation, it's seen immediately as arson. In other words, it's a fake conversation. And that blew my mind. You cannot market into a conversation you're not invited into. And that's mind-blowing to me.
So once again, for all of the listeners, Brad, the title of the book and the author, please? Authors.
The Clue Train Manifesto. And I know this is the hard part. Clue Train is CLUETRAIN Manifesto. The Clue Train Manifesto. And it's written by Rick Levine, Christopher Loke, Doc Searles, and David Weinberger. And it's really, each one tackled a different chapter, and they tried to explain what the internet really was about. At a time when, I'm writing this first book thinking, I know what the internet's about, and it really is this big group conversation. And this was before social media. And so they called it the Clue Train Manifesto because the train is there filled with clues to let you know business is going to be different than it was when you and I were first coming up. Now anybody can start a business. The barrier to entry is very low. You can see people come out of nowhere and just crush it. And you're like, where did that guy come from? And it's because they understood we're having a giant conversation that's global. And if you're going to market into that global conversation, you kind of have to be invited. You have to be liked. You have to get known. You have to be trusted. And that takes time. That isn't like the old style of marketing and sales where you stab what you're going to eat. You now have to farm. And that takes a little time, and that can be very frustrating if you're a type A personality. That's all I have to say.
That's why that's why I just stay consistent. As all of you know, as you heard on the intro to this, is get ready to ignite your potential and turn your motivation and marketing into momentum. Inside the word momentum is the word moment. And I believe, Brad, you brought numerous moments to this conversation today as a top performer for the 5 questions for success, because the level of your life, the level of your success physically, personally, financially, just your entire life itself, to me, success is life. There's all ingredients in it. Is the questions you choose to answer, the question you choose to receive to be asked to you. And I believe today, I suggest to re-listen to the episode, take some notes on what Brad said, how to overcome procrastination, the number 1 secret to hitting your biggest goals, sharing your favorite success quote, your top marketing tip, and the one book that changed it all for you. And I believe for so many of you, and I want to say this respectfully, allow yourself to represent your future because you are listening to this podcast, not your friend, not your family. What I've seen in my career is that so many of you have goals and dreams and aspirations, but you allow the fundamental. And it's in my first book I wrote, and I know it's in all of your books. And Brad, it's you only are as excellent as your team around you. And I believe in life right now, it's time to ignite your potential, get around the right people, take the fundamentals. And before I ask Brad one more question, this podcast is solely being sponsored by John and Chrissy Di Lemme. You're here. There's no outside sponsors. And as all of you know, and I keep saying this, and people understand this, I officially retired from speaking, coaching, and training. What we do now is anywhere in the state of Florida. My wife's obviously top producer. I'm the director of marketing. Comes to real estate, on either side of the properties, you have a property you want to move, you have a property you want to invest in. We were on the phone with someone last night. My wife was from upstate New York that's actually going to be featuring a property to move in Florida. They're also purchasing property in Tennessee. So any part of Florida real estate, any question, we have story after story after story of loss of a loved one properties, unsellable homes, which is a niche we operate in. We've had homes in the market for 9 months, 14 months, 26 months with no offers. We go in, do what we do between the marketing and the staging and designing, and boom. So anything we do for Florida real estate, feel free to give us a call or text directly, 561-847-3467, 561-847-3467. My wife is, as I say, the finest Florida professional realtor, home staging, designer, creating excellence, serving each and every one of you, because in every home there's a heart, there's a family, there's a child, there's a loved one. We're on the phone with someone this morning whose dad just passed away, and is going to be bringing her mom back to Rhode Island, so we'll be taking over the property. We've done 18 of those this year. So that's our sponsorship, as we say. Usually they play commercials. Well, I'm the commercial, as I say, commercial break. Now, Brad, wrap it up within like 30 to 60 seconds. What do you want to share to kind of wrap it all up with those questions and for you as a topic?
You know, being a marketing professional and a business person and things like this, you know, I'm now doing my podcast, which you mentioned earlier, Awakened Nation. And like you, I'm really listening to the conversations. You know, it's a different era for us, John, when you hit your 60s. I'm going to be 63 in a few months. And I just sit here sometimes, and I'm more interested in listening to other people than me talking. You know, and I appreciate you having me on the show today, and I love talking about some of the successes I've had, but I can tell you, and you probably appreciate this as a podcaster and as a business person, those conversations are priceless. The wisdom you get from interviewing people, I feel blessed. You know, as the good Lord above, you know, looks down on me and sees what I'm trying to do, I sometimes say, am I doing the very best? Am I shutting up enough? You know, because in the past I've spoken way too much, but am I shutting up enough? Am I listening? Am I getting my ego out of the way? And I think that's the best part of being able to be a business person, because you can start to see things that you didn't see before. And you're open to hear things that you didn't hear before.
Well, thank you, Brad, so much for your time, for your wisdom, and for all the listeners. Thank you for subscribing, sharing whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Every day they're adding another one. So I thank all of you, and I thank you for giving us a 5-star rating, sharing it. And any guests you say, you know, John, this would be a great guest for your top performance series for 5 questions. You know, feel free once again to call or text, and you can call or text me directly at 561-847-3467. Once again, 561-847-3467. And once again, the sponsorship break, the sponsor of this podcast series is John Di Lemme Real Estate, our real estate business. Whatever we could do for you in any part of Florida, we serve the entire part of Florida, from the Panhandle to the Keys, on anywhere for investors, homeowners, sellers, etc. Whatever we can do for you, let us know. God bless all of you. Have yourself a tremendous day. And remember, you are listening to this. You, not your friend. And I want to reiterate that point. God bless all of you. Thank you so very much. And thank you, Brad. Have yourself a wonderful day.
You too. God bless as well to you and Christy. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Brad.